Listen, this is what I need from you. I need you to like that subscribe button. Become one of us. Just like it. It's all you've got to do. Press the button. Click it. Like us. We know we'll like you. What's for dessert? Tonight we chow down on the tracking cookies with advancements in artificial intelligence in gaming. Today, we're going to just talk about some AI and how it's developed through the years. And I think today we'll start with the smartest person amongst us all, and that's me. No, I'm kidding. Nick, what you got for us?
Well, I got advanced fish that will swim away from you in Call of Duty. Even though...
Wait a minute. Didn't Mario do that?
No. Call of Duty was the first one to ever do that. Yeah, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence in gaming and how it's evolved throughout the years. And, you know, it's gotten pretty impressive with some games and not so much with others. But, you know, I do like that AI's really gotten to the point where, you know, it was all kind of pathfinding. It was all kind of set routes with AI and where they would go and, you know, when they would spawn and various things like that. And we've kind of evolved, especially with procedurally generated environments and maps in AI, you know, where they come in whenever certain environmental things happen within the games or certain rules are broken, certain values are set, and then AI comes into play and does various things. There's the advancement of AI now, I mean, I'm sure it'll be more incredible, but now it's definitely advanced beyond what we thought of back in the day. You know, where AI can think of, you know, what you're going to say in a game and kind of respond to that. Certain actions that you do, you know, when you do certain actions in certain games, they might respond in a different way than they were going to before. We have the adaptive AI. I think some game, I can't remember any game. I know there's some games that have it. I can't think of a game off the top of my head, but whereas depending on the actions you set, they will do certain various other, you know, they will do different things based on that. And so you'll have a different interaction with the AI every time you play. And that's a really cool concept. And I'm really excited to see how this AI will evolve in the future and introduce more, you know, storytelling and interactiveness, you know, with these, especially these big storytelling games like Mass Effect or Baldur's Gate. You know, how is that AI going to evolve to, you know, back in the day when we had like Ultima, where you could type in your, you know, questions and stuff on the keyboard. You know, that was really cool back then. Of course, there were set things that the people would say, you know, you had to have certain keywords and stuff. But, you know, could we get to the point where you could just type in whatever, you know, and maybe it does a Google search or something, it brings back an answer, or like maybe a big database of answers to a question where it feels really unique. You know, that would be a pretty expansive game. You know, you might have to have the server house that database of answers, but you know, something like that would be really cool. And I think we're getting closer to that with a lot of these games. And I'm really excited to see how AI continues to advance, because it has gotten a lot smarter and a lot more almost lifelike, almost like you're playing with another person to an extent with a lot of these games. So it's a really exciting concept and a really exciting thing to see as it evolves throughout the ages. But Shane, what do you think of this AI and its evolution through the years?
I think the way things have evolved, I want to see a Seaman 2 for the Dreamcast 2. That was back in the day. It was super cool. It was interesting. It was unique, but it was very limited. And then you progress to, did you guys remember Milo? It was the big Peter Molyneux.
That was a tech demo.
Tech demo for Kinect. You were supposed to be able to talk, interact with this AI boy, which was creepy as hell. but it was a really interesting concept. And I like where this is going, but it's getting weirder and weirder. Half frog man and half boy robot thing. Uh, but I like where that's going. I like that when we play Gears, for instance, you circle around and hit the bad guys. They don't just stand there and take a weapon. They will turn, they will fire, they will attack, they will, change up their patterns in these games. RPGs are getting better that way too. I like the fact that when I play a game now, it revolves more around thought than just simple mindless action. And that's pretty cool considering, God, what was it? PlayStation 2 Winback. I remember they were touting the AI in that game, how smart it was. That was special needs AI. That was terrible AI. But I guess
Winback was a fun game though.
It was a fun game, but the AI was not all it was touted to be. But it was definitely better than many other game at the time too. But I like to see the evolution that we're hitting. It does worry me though that AI is just going to be, just too damn smart, and I'm never going to get past the first level because AI is like, well, you turned down my difficulty, but that's not smart of me to let you do that. So I fixed it myself. And next thing you know, we got Terminators. So I'm kind of cool with that too, though. I like the idea of Terminators.
So who had 7 minutes for a Terminator reference?
I'm waiting for a HAL reference.
That's what I was waiting for too. All right, Russ, since you popped in, what do you got?
Well, I mean, for me, I just kind of like really, I think about Pong, Pong to where we're at now. I mean, Pong was one of the first games I think that had what we considered AI in. I remember playing Pong, and for those that don't know, back in the old Atari, you had this little controller that you turned the knob on the top, and it made the paddle go up and down on one side, and then you'd play against the computer. And I would always try to spin it really fast back and forth between hits so that maybe I would confuse the AI. It never worked because the AI was always one step ahead, even back in those days. But now the games are magnificent. They're just becoming more and more adept to a more full experience. My example that I was thinking, I'm glad that nobody really talked about it, is just stealth games in general. When stealth games first started, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted to do to get behind somebody and kill somebody. Now you have to actually have some skill. You have to have some art. You have to watch how you're walking up on somebody. I mean, that there makes it so much more realistic. Sometimes there's games where the AI is turned up so high that it's hard to sneak up on people. There's a balance within some of that sometimes, but I really enjoy it. I mean, I talk about Ghost a lot. I mean, Ghost is one of those games that I think kind of find that balance a little bit pretty well. Some of those old Metal Gear games were really good with that stealth action. I mean, there's a lot more to discuss through this, but that's the two things that I think about. I think about where we came from Pong until now. I mean, that's 40 plus years, if not more, of gaming, and how we've advanced in just that short period of time to what could come in the future. And so we'll talk about a few more of those things. But Pat, what about you, man? What comes to mind?
Well, I thoroughly enjoy this age of artificial intelligence in video games because if not, we'd all be stuck still playing platformers. Because in a platformer, there is no AI. The enemies do the same thing no matter what. That's just what they're pre-programmed to do. The enemy is going to walk this way, then they're going to walk this way, and then they're going to walk that way and that way, and you just keep doing it. This enemy's going to swing his sword, and he's going to wait 2 seconds, and he's going to swing it again. These enemies jump up twice. This fire element comes up for 5 seconds. I like the idea, or I love the idea of what artificial intelligence has brought to us, because if you think about what we'd be stuck with on just platformer games, and think of a game like, I don't know, what's a really good, just think of anything. People have brought up Gears and stuff like that. The AI will actually seek out cover and try to flank you if there's a group of them, they will try to come around to the side of you, and if you try to go behind them, they'll melee you. It's not just like their pathing is designed to get to you and kill you. One of the all-time like great achievements of AI is, if anybody here has played, why am I forgetting the name? Alien Isolation. That's what I was trying to think of. If anybody played Alien Isolation, the entire object of that game is there's an alien after you, and the alien is trying to get to you. That would not be possible without some type of AI or some type of cheating to where the alien is always behind you, or something stupid. The AI and that game actually runs the alien around the environment to get to you and to do things like that. It's not on rails, and stuff like that. So, I mean, AI has afforded us a lot of the games that we love. I mean, The Last of Us 2, think about a game like that. And Russ brought up stealth. The Last of Us, the first one, very stealthy game where they had enemies that actively and seek out looking for you. And if you make noise, they'll find you and they'll call their friends, if you make noise and stop moving on like the clickers and stuff, they can't see you. So they'll just kind of look for you. But if you stay silent, they can walk right over you, and leave you alone. So, I mean, there's a lot of cool things that AI has afforded us in types of games that we love to play. One of the games that I absolutely love, and I don't think we play very much in this game, is the Division, in Division 2. The AI in that game is insane. But there comes to a point where AI has a limitation. And that game also has a great concept of what happens when AI can only do so much. What does the Division do when AI when AI reaches its limitation on what it can do? It spams you with unwinnable situations. And what I mean by that is the Division's only mechanism for increasing the difficulty is to create more grenadiers, to throw explosives at you, to draw you out of cover. So instead of them making the enemies a little bit more adept at staying in cover and popping up and doing this, they just overwhelm you with things that make you move out of your cover position. So that's a limitation of their AI. I very much love what AI has afforded us in video games, because The Last of Us, great game. Horizon Zero Dawn, with the artificial intelligence dedicated to the creatures. The AI, without that, we would be stuck with what, patterns. You would basically say, could you imagine playing, let's say anything, let's say Division, let's say any of those cover mechanic game with the pattern-based AI. You'd be like, okay, the grunts always move into the first cover, duck, pop up, shoot. 2 seconds later, they go down, they pop up, and then, they go to the right cover, and then they do the same thing. They move to the left cover. Who wants that? Who wants a predictable pattern in a game like that, or in any game that's adventure style game? I don't want to fight a robotic dinosaur in Horizon Zero Dawn where he just takes 6 steps, turns to the left, takes 6 more steps, turn to the right. He just does a zigzag pattern. I don't want that. I want some type of randomness to it, or what appears to be randomness to me. So I cannot imagine video games today without AI and stuff like that. And when I mean AI, I don't mean like on rails pathing and stuff like that. I mean true, like, you make a sound, a creature perks up and is like, hey, I think I heard something over there. Let me go check it out. Or, or any of the horror based games. I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly a lot of what's in AI in video games. I don't know what it takes to code them. I'm not that smart for that type of stuff. But I cannot imagine where we would be today. I mean, can you imagine where EA would be without it? I mean, just leave out the fish that they were the first to bring to the table, they'd say. Could you imagine where Madden would be, or any of the sports games that they put out, if there wasn't AI?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point about the sports. I didn't even think about the sports. Yeah, the evolution of a sports game from Tecmo Bowl to Madden 2020. I mean, that's a gigantic leap. I mean, hell, look at your phone. You can talk to your phone, and your phone will understand you, and your phone will tell you things that you didn't think about, or give you answers to things that you didn't know. And in games, it's pretty interesting how it's changed. And the more you talk about it, and the more you think about it, it is amazing how far this has come in the gaming world.
Well, just think about, like, Patrick just brought up something that just really kicked in my mind. Like, I mean, when we used to LAN party and do stuff like Counter-Strike in the day, the original Counter-Strike, I mean, the AI in Counter-Strike was fairly decent, but it was still all pathing, and then it was basically data mining the locations of where you were at, and then that's when they would fire upon you. You look at a game like, COD that we just played, we played bots in that game. We played some bots and others, and how those bots have matured almost. I mean, that's the best way I can put it, how that has matured. Rainbow Six Siege. I mean, yeah, there's still some pathing to some of that, but they also do have a little bit more strength and a little bit more difficulty when you turn that AI on a little bit more. Whereas even in the older games, there was still just more pathing, as Patrick had essentially said. There's not as much pathing as there was originally. So just that leap there, and that we're only looking at 15-year span between that game and what it is now, and just the evolution of first-person shooters or tactical shooters or whatever you want to call that.
Right. AI, and it's interesting. I would love to know a little bit more about how they do certain things in AI, because they have to rein AI in to some extent, right? Because AI, if in a broad sense of the term, is it has to be contained to some extent, because you can't just say, I'm going to give this enemy an AI, and it's also got access to the entire kernel level of the game, so it knows where the player is, because the system has to know where you are, so the AI knows where you are. But I also can't let it cheat by saying, okay, it knows he's coming out of cover right there on the left, so I'm going to aim right there, and I know the split second he comes out. So I mean, there's a whole thing of how they build this that just amazes me to understand that there's a fine line of making it difficult and making the AI competent and player-like without saying the AI just always knows where you are, so they're always going after you or hunting in that direction for you, because that would be, and the only way they're dumbing down the AI is to slow their reactionary time down. So if they know you're coming out of the wall or coming out that doorway, we're going to give them a 5-second delay or a 10-second or a 2-second or no delay. You got to roll out of that door like you're Rambo and come up with your bow and arrow and just shooting everything. So
Yeah, and it is neat when you talk about that. How do they limit the AI for difficulties? Say, like for a game of chess, you make a move. Now, what's that, Deep Blue or whatever that supercomputer is? I mean, it's played the best. It has every move possible. How do they make that for a easy difficulty allow you to win? I mean, the AI is probably sitting back laughing. Why do I got to let this dude win? He sucks. He's terrible. I mean, and then you up the difficulty one. I mean, it's interesting how they limit the AI to prevent you from just being devastated, because it's obvious they can do it. It's obvious that artificial intelligence can just, destroy you at pretty much anything you want to do in a game.
well, yeah, I mean, you just was a perfect example. It was Deep Blue, and I think Watson is like the most recent one or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
chess is a perfect example. I mean, I don't know how they limit it, but maybe they in a limiter, because in chess it's all about knowing, okay, this person has moved this move. What are my counter moves to that? And then the computer can pull together all of the resources of the web or whatever was programmed from AI learning. Maybe it's only allowed to learn from playing another player. It's given the basic rule set, because that's what a lot of AI that's considered AI now is machine learning AI. So what that means is that I give the computer the rules. So here's chess. This piece can move this way. This piece can move this way. There's a few inherent rules such as castling and this and that we're going to teach it. And then we're going to say, okay, you're going to start playing games against people, and your objective is to checkmate. Checkmate the other person. So you play. He sees your opening move. He goes, okay, I can move this here, and he just plays back and forth, kind of like a normal person learns. But we have a different way of thinking than a machine does. So the machine's basically just storing move sets. It's like, okay, you can move this piece here, and this is a counter to that. But what if I want to, do a cheat move, such as, a 6 move, where if I move these pieces and they move those pieces in 6 move, I have them in checkmate. So they learn from that. Or you just give them a giant database of all the known moves and counter moves to chess, and you say, pick from these. How do you limit that in AI? Do you say, okay, you're only allowed to think 2 moves ahead, or 3 moves ahead, or 6 moves, or 10? Is that how you limit AI in chess? Because then it's got to say, okay, this person moved this, pawn to whatever, if this person moved that pawn to that position, what are my available counters? So are there 10 counters? Are there 20 counters? So it has to pick one of those 10 possible choices. And the more you move, the less, the smaller your counter move becomes. So that's how it's playing chess. And that's on a very simplistic scale, if you will. Chess is a very simplistic scale of machine learning or AI. But when you think of something as complex as The Last of Us or Halo or any of this stuff, I don't know how they could program that type of artificial intelligence on there without making the computer seem like it has an overwhelming advantage, because that's the quickest way to ruin a video game for me. I don't know about you guys, where the computer seems like it has a massive advantage over me and I just can't win for losing.
Yeah, how many times have every one of us in this group and every person listening yelled, "This game cheats"? That's what it
Well,
would be.
fighting games, think of
Every
fighting
week.
games. Fighting games are the worst culprit of that, where you play through, especially like the end bosses in fighting games. Doesn't matter if you're playing Street Fighter or Dead or Alive or whatever. You play Street Fighter. Once you get to M Bison, it's like, this dude's cheating all over the place. He's just always seems to counter me and doing super moves before I can even touch my controller. And nowadays we got into kind of what you guys were talking about, which is adaptive AI, right? Adaptive AI is where it's a learning AI. It learns how you play, and therefore it kind of like what Patrick was saying, it counteracts it kind of learns how you play and counteracts what you're doing with its own. It comes up with its own set of movements, its own way to counteract what you're doing. That's a really interesting idea. Again, like Patrick said, I don't know how they program all this stuff, but like programming an AI to learn from you or learn how the player plays, and playing against that, or counteracting how the player plays is pretty impressive stuff. And we've seen examples like that in a lot of different games, where, back to the Gears thing, I feel like, I don't know exactly if it's adaptive on the enemies, but it almost feels that way, because it feels like they will change cover, or they will, try to flank or do whatever, depending on what you do as the as the main protagonist in the game. They won't necessarily go to a different cover or do different things just because they're programmed to do that. They do it because you go to one piece of cover, and they're like, okay, cool, we can go here and do this. And whether that's programmed or if that's adaptive, we don't know. But there have been games that have that adaptive AI that kind of thinks on, or kind of programs on command as far as what it's going to do next. And that's some pretty impressive stuff, and it's pretty exciting to see what's going to happen in the future with all that.
Yeah, I like where we're going. Is there a game that you really think about when you think of, like, wow, there's, the way this thing works or plays, the enemies, or is there anything that kind of stands out to anybody?
I mean, I mentioned Division because, in my opinion, Division is one of
Yeah.
those games that's completely random. Every player can have a different experience outside of the PvP Dark Zone stuff. But when you're fighting a group of enemies, how you approach those group of enemies. And for example, what I mean by that is, let's say you see a group of cleaners hanging out outside, and there's 4 or 5 of them. Depending on your character type, what I mean by that is your basic loadout. So if you're a grenade guy, if you're a turret guy, if you're this guy or that guy, you approach the situation differently. You can also approach the situation as a stealthier type approach, or a just direct all out, I'm jumping in and I'm gunning. I mean, that game, and then the AI basically builds off of that. So it's kind of like playing a multiplayer game by yourself where the NPCs are other players, because you throw a grenade in there and you kill 2 of them out of the 5. The other 3 don't immediately turn and start shooting at you. They run away and get cover. They run away and they get cover, and then two of them will pin you down while the third is trying to work its way around. That is the most adaptive AI that I've ever seen, because you'll be so focused on those other 2 because they're doing what the AI is giving them the abilities and constraints to do. And that third one is just, he's being all sneaky, like with that crap-eating grin on his face walking around. He's like, hey, buddy, and just lays into you right next to you. And you're like, where did you come from?
That was Nick.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, to me, that a game is a perfect example of it, because the AI is not only just trying to an individual AI is not just trying to kill you or get you, in that game. They're working together as a group because they'll flush you out, and you'll see actively that if you run, especially in like a group like we used to run, 4 people, you could have a guy on your team that's like the big tank guy, and his job is to basically draw aggro from the NPC enemies, and he'll be up there just laying into those guys, trying to hold 3 of them off. And next thing you know, there's another big guy that comes in, and he's telling the other 2 guys to go around the side of you and get you. So it's very adaptive in that game. That's a highly adaptive AI game that I love to play to this day. I still play it sometimes.
Let me ask you this. Where is it that you would like to see AI improve in parts of games? Because we've seen games evolve to where you can blow up a building and it falls down, like it would in real life. Characters, you're walking around with a gun, characters will run away. Where would you like to see that AI improve even more that would make games better, in your opinion?
Well, I think that Patrick brings up a good example of Division 2, but then there's the I don't want to call them MOBA games, but maybe those games like Siege and like Siege and Killing Floor 2 and COD, those games where that we as a group, us 4 who don't necessarily love PvP, but we love to have sometimes those arena based games. Maybe some improvement in that, maybe bring that Division 2 adaptive to the other, because sometimes we almost can get into those games and we'll get a couple of maps together and then we'll realize what their pathing is, and then we're setting up ready just to kind of kill to get through it real quickly. Now, if we bump up the difficulty, sometimes the difficulty goes to what Patrick was saying. Instead of them using smarter tactics, it's more firepower being thrown at you, a lot more firepower. Like all of a sudden they're being able to throw grenades every 4 seconds, whereas we're like, wait a second, we have a cooldown of 30 seconds. Like why is it that they're able to just keep chunking those things? Maybe there's some room for improvement there, but I mean, they're still on the right path. This is a very delicate, you ask a question that requires a response, but I'm being very delicate in saying they're on the right path, but that may be some room for improvement in our world when it comes to a cooperative game that's not PvP based, or at least has a PvE element to it.
For me, as far as adaptive AI, that concept, I would go with Russ with those arena or FPS type games. But as far as AI advancements overall, I would love to see RPGs take on that. And then I'm not just talking about just the main protagonists and characters you get. I'm talking about town folks that when you go to a town or a city or something like that, like all the AI characters having that advancement in AI where they're not just saying a line and just pacing back and forth, like, kind of like what Patrick was saying, but they're moving along their daily lives or doing daily things. A lot of games try to do this, right? Anthem was one of those things that kind of touted that, and Mass Effect was one of those things that kind of touted that. But again, it was one of those things where those games still had that pathing, and everybody wasn't just doing whatever they were doing. It would be kind of cool to see an RPG take that AI aspect and also remember what you've done, kind of like Mass Effect did in the sense of the trilogy, kind of remember what Commander Shepard did throughout each 3 games. It would be really cool to know, like, if you did something in a certain town, that the certain townsfolk remembered you and remembered certain actions you took, or various things like that. Like, the advancements in AI in an RPG could be really cool just to see, like, how the AI adapts in that RPG universe and how it adapts in that town, and with you as the character, as the main protagonist and the characters you bring along and stuff like that. Not necessarily the enemies so much, because the enemies are kind of set in an RPG. They have their certain weaknesses and strengths and things like that, but definitely like just the AI constructs, the townspeople, the people you meet along the way, and various things. That would be and maybe even the boss, before you fight the boss, maybe how the boss interacts and says certain things or does certain things depends on your actions throughout the game. And kind of, not where it's programmed, but where it's kind of more of adaptive in that sense, where it says, okay, you did this, so these bosses or these various things change in certain situations based on your actions and how the world just changes around you. The whole world is the AI, right? And various things change to depend on what you do as the game changer in that. Just thinking of the ideas of an AI in an RPG, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, you're describing what Fable was trying to do, but
right,
in a
Fable
massive way, which
right
would be freaking awesome. I love the ideal of all that. I mean, that would be really cool. I mean, to know that you're actually making those differences.
Can I ask
What about you,
a
Pat?
follow-up? Can I ask a follow-up question to that, though? Maybe more like, would you enjoy a smaller world with more interaction versus the massive worlds that they have with that limited interaction?
Well, I was just getting ready to say something about, because I honestly think that that's an interesting point. Could you imagine? So let's say the AI has gotten to the point to where it can self-drive a game, and what I mean by that is that, I don't know. Let's take a game like I don't know. Let's take Dragon Quest. Well, I played that not too long ago, but let's say that Dragon Quest is shrunk down into a world, and it's super small. And by that, when I mean super small, is it's like a continent. How cool would that be if the game had AI? And what I mean by that is that it was persistently driven. So when you're logged out, the game is still going on. So things are happening, such as creatures are attacking a village and the kingdom sends guards, or the kingdom decides to ignore that town because that town's not prosperous enough. A world that keeps changing even while you're gone. And when you log in, you may see that monsters overtook this village that you once protected or whatever, and now they're gone because you weren't around to help them. And that's kind of like an AI thing where the hero failed the villagers because he wasn't around in this persistent world. And it's like an MMO, but condensed into your world. So, the king had to make a decision. The monsters were attacking these two villages, and which village does he take? And the AI says, okay, I want this one because it sends more tribute to the kingdom, and then the little bitty poor kingdom gets like decimated, and you can go back in and help rebuild this kingdom, or you can ignore them and they stay gone forever, and eventually their people go extinct. Could you imagine a game like, and that Russ's back to what Russ was saying, is that'd be a smaller condensed world instead of having a map massive like Odyssey. It would just be condensed down to like a few islands or a kingdom size area, and you live in that kingdom, and realistically in that time frame you can venture around. In realistic time, you could venture around in the different areas of the kingdom, but they're constantly changing. So there's a main storyline, but the main storyline, you can change it, but things can change back or not necessarily back, but get worse or something. I think that would be kind of a really cool concept for an RPG to be a living, persistent world. Even when you're logged out, something is happening to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What you were saying is about the being logged off and the world keeps evolving. When Seaman was released, I love Seaman, but when Seaman was released,
do we know
that was the whole spiel of it was if you did not load him up every once in a while and feed him and talk with him, it would affect it, because if you go 24 hours without feeding him, you come back to a dead Seaman. Because the clock stayed persistent, which, I don't know how that technology worked, but that would be really cool. The one thing I would honestly love to see more than anything in an RPG, especially right now, with what you're talking about, is my name. I want to be able it'd be able to say my name. I'm not talking some weird gamer tag that's got X's and O's and numbers in it, but my gamer tag is not hard. My real name is not hard. I would love for the RPG to, hey Shane, here's a sword. Go stab a dragon in the butt. That would be cool.
We got to get past that Microsoft Sam and stuff. I mean, they're getting better. but
Yeah.
it had to be able.
Right.
The problem is that video game audio is pre-recorded, as we know, and that's the problem. They would have to be able to, instead of using like Claudia Black or any of these people to voice over in a video game, they would have to, or whoever to voice over in a video game, they would have to write a complete dialogue in an artificial voice. So they could say, we want that artificial voice to have phonetics so that it knows that SHAN is Shane. And it could say, okay, I know the
You forgot the E.
vocabulary. We're going to know it's Shan. It's Shamey. We're going to call you Shamey.
Shame.
Shamey.
But you know, it knows. But it would know that if you didn't put the E on there, it's Shan. Or it knows that how the E is enunciated in the English language, you know. Or if Russ put in RUSS, it knows that's Russ. Or if it puts in his full name, it's like, that's Russell. You know, it would be able, but that has to all be done in an artificial voice, because voice acting in video games is read by a real live person pretty much almost all the time. So there's no way that person could say, I'm going to speak every known English name and then have to compensate for if a Nick plays or if a Shane plays or if a Aisha plays or a James or whoever, you know, plays this game. So, I mean, I can understand that. And that's not really AI. That's more about programming and how they got to get away from.
Yeah.
But an AI has to act at that point. Then an AI but that's AI at that point. You have to teach an AI to act and add inflection when it's sad, not be monotone, be like, oh no, my dog died. You know, the video game has to have some type of inflection, which they don't
Chan.
have.
My dog died, Chan.
Well,
Yeah.
well, and you're
So-
right, because look at when you call a number for a business or whatever, and you know, put in your information. Oh, hello, Shan. How are you doing today? Would you like to check out your account, Shan? I mean, yeah, you don't want that in your RPGs.
Right. So how, I don't know how, unless they somehow learn how to create an algorithm to where somebody can just they can just record somebody pronouncing consonants and like certain conjunctions.
But
of
you know
words.
they're going to get there sometime. They're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
get there one day.
Could
Well,
you
I mean-
imagine having
I mean,
any famous actor just read 5 lines and they pay them for those 5 lines and that's it. They just pay them for their likeness. So
Claudia
they don't have to
Black
pay-
said my name. Yay.
right. Or
I
anybody.
love
They don't
you.
have to. They don't have to. You know, instead of in Mass Effect, instead of Commander Shepard, it's Commander Cypher or Commander Patrick or Commander Smith or Commander Shane, Commander Nick. Anybody. That would be awesome. But how do you get to that point? And I think it's a ways down. And I don't necessarily that will be AI, but AI has to be able to learn to act and have inflection and meaning in their voice.
well, I feel like we can't be too far from it though either, because Alexa, what's my name?
I'm talking to Russell. This is Russell's account.
But Alexa
point,
can't add
Russ.
inflection. But she can't add inflection and meaning in her voice. She
Well,
can't be sad.
She can in a small way she can, but I'm just saying like maybe we're on that way. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not
That's a
saying
good
that
example,
we're
though,
there.
Russ.
but-
We're definitely on the road, you know, and it's going to get there, you know, whether it's 5 or 10 years from now, we're definitely going to get there, you know, and kind of like going back with what Patrick was saying, you know, if that kingdom's destroyed, what happens to that AI? You know, that would still be a cool concept, because what happens to the AI in the kingdom? You know, they leave, and then what happens? They become refugees. They build a new kingdom somewhere else. I mean, you know, do they
join
become
Al-Qaeda?
bad guys.
do they
become the bad
do they
guys
join the
because
bad
the kingdom
guys,
lets them
right?
down.
And they
Yeah.
start attacking the kingdom. I mean, like, there's just so many possibilities, and that's something I'm really excited to see with an MMO or an RPG like that.
My
It'd
name
be
is
it'd
Shane,
be a
and you
single
destroyed
player.
my village. Now I joined the Rugrats, and I'm coming
I'm
after you.
Shan.
Yes.
It's Shan from now on. But
Shan the Destroyer.
that would be really cool to have persistence like that.
Yes.
You know, in one of the biggest and easiest things I think is the low hanging fruit is FPS games need to have better adaptive AI, because what I mean by this is a perfect example is we play Call of Duty, and a lot of times we just play us versus bots because a lot of online communities can be pretty toxic. So we just want to play to have fun. The level of difficulty between the bots is, oh my god, I'm shooting the crap out of these bots and killing them, and I have a 10-to-1 kill ratio. I kill 10 of them for 1 death. And the next level of difficulty is, oh my god, he's killed me 20 times and I've killed 1 of them. There is no in between in the bots, and it's because the AI for that is not really like adapt. It's not adaptive. It's more of the reactionary time of the bot versus when you first appear in their field of vision. It's like we're going to quicken the pace of these bots, not really make them adapt more to your team's play style to make it challenging for you, because that breaks the when you do that, in my opinion, it doesn't prove that you've created better AI. It proves that all you've done is make the bot superior to an average human, because even in a massive standard battle online, I don't do that bad. But if you go from bots on like normal to hard, it's like they've taken the AI, they've taken the personality of 10 players and crammed them into 10 of the best players and crammed them into one bot. There's no intermediate learning level for them. So I wish it would, to make games more like that, games like that more fun, they have to be adaptive to learn the play style of the group and say, okay, here's how we make it more difficult. Shane struggles with these characters. Nick struggles with these type of players. Patrick struggles with these, and Russ struggles with these guys. So we're going to throw a mix of them in there. We're going to throw, Shane doesn't do really good with guys that peek out from the left side of the door. So we're going to start throwing a little bit more left side door leaners in on him. And, Nick doesn't do good with the guys up on the roof, and so on and so forth. They're not adaptive and learning like that. They just throw more guys at you, or they give the bots more health, or they give the bots quicker reactionary times. That's how they're doing all that. So I really wish in AI for those FPS games, because I don't like to play online because online communities are too toxic, and you just get somebody who wants to be a douche in there, and they're just being a jackhole. So I would prefer to play with the bots in that case. And in my opinion, the bots are either too easy or too hard. There's no in between on the bots.
Yeah, I agree. Rainbow Siege is probably 100 times better when it comes to difficulty transition than Call of Duty is. But it still has that, instead of going from difficulty 1 to 10, it doesn't have steps, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has 1, 5, 10. You don't have that minimal transition. You have holy hell or, oh, not too bad.
Right.
Well,
yeah,
it
'cause,
also,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Chris.
Well, it also suffers again from pathing problems. That's what I was talking about earlier, is it also kind of suffers from pathing problems. Those maps are pretty limited. We know they're going to come one of 3 areas. And it's getting better. Again, I'm not trying to complain. It's a whole lot better than it was in Counter-Strike, because Counter-Strike, even on some of the hardest levels, me and Pat could post up somewhere and just be like, oh, they're going to come down this hallway, and unless we really just squared up and missed the wall, hit the wall instead of them, we're pretty much tearing them apart. So
Right. This hallway is a meat grinder. All we do is
Exactly.
post up on it.
Yeah, but still though, it is increasing. The ability for them to change and modify is getting a little bit better, but it's still the difference between Division 2 and something like this is that adaptive AI, that whatever that formula that Division 2 has versus some other games. Destiny has it to some extent. They're also kind of like, after you get running the same, you kind of get used to that, but they will take cover, they will flank you and stuff like that too. But we're getting there, but I think that's what's missing out of Siege though, Shane, to be honest, is that like you said, it goes from, we had, I died once and killed 25 of them to, I killed one to dying 20 times, because they're just, I don't know what they do exactly. I don't know if it's like more firepower or what it is, but it's just strange.
Yeah, Siege, I think Siege has a trouble in certain maps. It's just like anything with Siege. If you're doing any type of protection in Siege, the enemy, no matter what difficulty you throw it in, doesn't seem to have an AI. And what I mean by that is, let's take, for example, we're protecting a hostage. We'll post up in a room that has 3 entrances, 2 doors and a roof, let's say that. The enemy doesn't learn and come at you as a group, no matter what difficulty you put it on. They don't come in all at once. They trickle in. It's like, I'm going to send 2 guys through this door. I'm going to give you a couple seconds of rest. I'm going to send 2 more through this door, and then 2 more through that door. The way that they increase difficulty is it seems to be that they're a little bit more bullet spongy, and they shoot quicker, and they aim for the head more often.
They do a lot more wall breaching too.
Right. Yeah, they don't like come in the front door. They come in and they post up, and a lot of them will just drop in from the roof on you. So I mean, I don't know that game. I mean, but then you think about how dumb the AI in that game is in a bomb defusal match. You put a bomb down on the ground and you post up in the four corners of the room. The bots just run in the room and start disarming the bomb, and all four of you are in perfect view of them. And you're just like, all right, I'm just going to shoot that idiot defusing the bomb. The AI is not smart enough to go sweep the room before they go after the bomb. They're just like, oh, I got to defuse this bomb, you know? So I think that one's a passing one with maybe a little bit of AI, but obviously some of it is AI. They can't just say shoot everything on site, because you can still sneak in on them and stuff. So
now, when we were playing Call of Duty, we were doing the zombie map. I can't remember which map it was. We had to set off the things and to protect them, and the zombies would attack the little machines. Now, not all the zombies just went straight for it. A lot of them went after us as well, which that's what Rainbow should be doing. And that's a great example. Even zombies have it figured out. Go for the people, shooting at the people, but the zombies attacking the machines. And that's something that AI needs to really, get figured out. I would like to see games like Grand Theft Auto. Those NPCs be a lot more intelligent and accurate to real life. Yes, they will run when they see a gun, but they run 20 feet and then they hop on their cell phone and they just keep walking along. I'd like to see a little more realism with that. I walk down the street with an RPG. I want people crapping bricks, and running for miles. I want, when you beat a hooker to death with a bat, I want the police to really react to it. I mean, I would love to see like
so
you were talking about
reacting, right? Because in real world, the police aren't going to react to that.
The only thing with that is every time you die, it would have to reset. Otherwise, you'd be on like America's Most Wanted, on that game.
I want that. I want
the whole time.
America's Most Wanted.
You'd be like hiding out in a trailer in the desert,
You have to get reborn. What was that old Cherub game where every time you died, you're reborn as a baby? I can't remember what that old school game was.
Yeah.
I think it may have been called Cherub or something. But that's what Grand Theft Auto is. It's a persistent world where every time you die, you just have to get reborn and you come back as a baby. But I mean, I think the biggest possibility, in my opinion, is what we discussed earlier for AI. I want to see something that's on a scale of an MMO, but single player. Like, I want to feel the scale of an MMO, of the world changing and things happening, but on a single player environment. And I want it persistent. I want to, when I'm not logged in, the world to still turn in the video game. Kind of like how current theory is that we're all a holographic ancestor simulation. The current scientific theories say that we're a holographic simulation. So I want that to be a video game where the world is
like
kind
the
of
Matrix.
Progressing. Yeah. The world is progressing and you're not in it. And when you hop into it, if you spent a week or a month out of this game, it could change a lot, and you just hop back in. And that's what I want to see. Something like that. Something on the ancestor, the ancestor AI experiment level.
I want Black and White 3. Where if I log off for a month, now they're not worshipping me anymore, and
right. And
they love.
Yeah. They moved on to another deity who is now an AI that is vying for your spot.
Right.
Yeah, that's definitely
cool. I mean,
definitely
but right
cool.
there, you guys brought up a couple of examples of where it already, quasi exists. Now let's put it into, let's get them all together into this one game or something like that. I mean, it would probably be in the future. I mean, because right now the only way to do that would be on a dedicated server somewhere. I mean, heck, I don't know. I don't know that some of us wouldn't pay for, if we had to pay for a dedicated server or something like that for a game like that. I don't know that if it was a good game that some of us wouldn't pay for our own dedicated server for that. So
I mean, I currently pay for a Valheim dedicated
that's
server.
What I'm saying. Like,
I'm willing to pay for it.
We've done it in the past. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think I agree with you guys on that. That would be a very interesting concept for that. But just to say it again, I mean, but just to think about how far we've come, within the last 40 years, I hopefully I'm around for at least 20 or 30 more and see where it's at,
Right. I mean, another example, a perfect example of AI in video games is this is going to go back to Russ's one of Russ's favorite genres is racing games. You know, back in the day, the only way for the AI, there was no such thing as AI. It was the car changed speeds or places depending on the level of difficulty. So the higher the difficulty, the faster the car went, the less mistakes they would make. They would say, okay, in the original Gran Turismo or whatever, the car on the normal difficulty would be a little less even matched for you. So it could overtake you, but it would make more mistakes. And then as you raise the difficulty, the car became quicker and made less mistakes than you. And that's kind of how they did that back in those old days with the on-rails racing games. And then as Gran Turismo matured, they played more adaptive. It was an adaptive play style. The cars would react to your play style to make it a challenge for you. So if you were really good in the corners, the AI could stay really good in the corners and try to just keep on your tail. Racing games really pushed the envelope in that adaptive AI. So that just didn't seem like it was unfair, because originally racing games seemed unfair because the car would just, the AI cars would for some reason just get this speed boost from nowhere and be like up your butt and then way past you when you spun out in the corner, and you're just like, you guys were half lapped by the time I made up here,
Well, there's like rivals in some games now. I can't remember what it is, but they learn
Need for
how
Speed
you
had
race.
that a lot.
Yeah, how you race, and as they adapt. I mean, this is not really AI, but then I think Forza actually did something where you can like drive against your friends. Like they would race the map, and then you would race against them, and they would. I mean, it's not really AI, but it's
Ghosting,
still
yeah.
it's still like it's really cool stuff. I mean. But
Right.
yeah, I agree with Pat on that. I didn't even think about that. I mean, I do enjoy a good racing game, and the difference where it was before was like, let's say in the original Gran Turismo, I mean, you would have moments where you're like sitting there, you're in second place, and you're like, like a quarter mile in front of somebody, and all of a sudden you look behind you and you're like, wait a second, he just passed me and he's like almost lapped me. How did he just do that? And now it's a little bit more realistic. Your mistakes end up being what causes you to lose the race, because the other guys are just more consistent, or the AI is more consistent versus what you're doing.
Right. Can you
I
imagine how
think-
good Gran Turismo 7 is going to be when it comes out next year?
I think you guys are probably missing the most important genre of all for artificial intelligence to really improve: fishing. Seriously though, think about a good fishing game that truly reacts to real fishing environments, as far as your baits and all that, because typically you throw a line in, you pull the fish out. But if you move your boat a little too much, you scare the fish. I mean, that would be awesome. I like fishing.
We've come full circle from the beginning of the podcast talking about the fishing in Call of Duty.
And now he wants the Call of Duty fish in his
Yes,
bass
to
tournament
be in
game.
his bass tournament game. Yep.
Don't look in the water, Shane, because if you do, you'll scare the fish.
That's
right.
exactly
Didn't
right.
we have a fishing game with the rod and everything like that?
Yes, it did.
Oh
man.
Yeah, on
my
the
God.
Dreamcast,
Oh
they
my
had
God.
the
Dreamcast.
little fishing thing. Yeah.
Yep. The Dreamcast caster.
Yeah. Dreamcast
I thought the
That's
Wii did
Sega
too.
Bass Fishing.
Yes.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we did too with the fishing game.
I think probably every system's got something like that out. We just
Hey, I
don't know
I
because
don't-
we don't.
I don't
buy
have a
them.
fishing rod for my Xbox. Come on now.
No.
I bet we can find you one.
I'll just take my Xbox controller to a real fishing rod and just be in there.
Well, caught me a 50-inch LCD.
Yep. Oh, and I lost it. It fell on the floor.
Mine broke.
I mean, I don't know where we would be without some type of AI adaptive learning. Because if we still had to live on patterns, I don't know if I'd be a video gamer, because I would get so frustrated with platformers and, and you guys brought up Tecmo Bowl and all that stuff. Because in Tecmo Bowl and all that stuff, all the AI did was focus on whoever had the football and
Yep.
just like blitz them. I mean, that's all they did. Now the AI in Madden is like trying to get, if they're too far behind you, they're trying to short you, whereas most video games would just be like, they get a boost of speed. You're the running back of the team, and you're the fastest runner on your team. But man, the whole defensive line of the other team is twice as quick as you are,
Oh, I had an old Commodore 64 monitor that I plugged my Nintendo into, and I played so much Tecmo Bowl that lines were burned into the Commodore 64 monitor, and you could see, like, I'd hand it off to Walter Payton, go up, make a slow move down, and then go straight, and you're good to go. Like, nobody's just wait for that guy to fly by trying to tackle you, and you're done. And it's like, and now you have, I mean, I think I'm probably the only one that's played a Madden football game most recently. I don't think any of us. I think you can control how hard you throw the ball. So if you want to lob it, you want to throw a dart or a precision pass. In the whole process, you can decide if you want to make a aggressive catch, a safe catch. I mean, it's all, every bit of that. It's hurt my gameplay. It's hurt me because it's almost too much AI or too much decision making within those video games now. I mean, you could actually play a game and just pick plays and let them run themselves. That's how much AI is in this game.
So you're playing Football Manager at that point, right?
Pretty much. I mean, you
he's
can do
exactly
that.
right.
He's the coach. Yeah.
The last time I tried to play it, Madden, you're absolutely right. It's more about just making a couple really decisions and then letting the AI play it out. It's not really fun that way.
Right.
But not
Yeah, I'm just
everything in
saying.
AI is gonna advance.
Well, then
in
you
a
might
good
as well
way.
play Football Manager.
Right.
If you want
You
to
might
do
as well
that.
go play real football.
Well, I mean, but those guys
Except
that
for
play
all
those,
middle-aged and too old for that.
right? But those guys that play those kind of games, I mean, they are used to those games and they enjoy those games. I'm just saying, for the example of the AI stuff, is that they're so advanced now, even in the sporting, especially probably more in the sporting world, when it comes to game time or minute by minute decisions. Whereas some of the stuff that we're looking for, yeah, we want the minute by minute decisions, but we also want something that envelops a whole world, that envelops a whole, encompasses a whole world. That, like, that little boy that we met that we gave 5 shillings to in Ostershire remembers that. And so 5 years later in the game, he remembers that, and he gives you, he happens to be a blacksmith and gives you a Valerian sword. And you're like, oh, wow, I'm so glad I get, that's the kind of stuff that would be amazing to us, probably.
I was really worried with that.
Except for
story
you can't
was
use that
going.
in football.
Exactly.
Have the quarterback with it. Well, I mean, let's take. I want to give another really good example of AI. We have EA has Fight Night, boxing, and all that kind of stuff. You guys remember playing Punch Out? That was
Yep.
completely rail driven. Every enemy did the same thing. There's like 2 left punches and an uppercut. You got to wait for that opening, and you go in. It was all about learning those patterns of that movement of that character in the game. It wasn't. I hate to say it because it is a really hard game, and it's a game of patience and stuff like that. But you learn the patterns, you learn the game. Play like Fight Night or any of those boxing games, and the AI is adaptive. Just because the guys, you learn the players have, because Fight Night's based off of real fighters and stuff like that. So it knows this guy's a southpaw, or this guy's, a strong, he got a strong right or whatever. The game knows that, but the game also lets you play career mode where you go against them, and they adapt to your play style. So if you automatically open up every time with a big right hook or a right uppercut or a right jab or something, the AI picks up on that, and they learn, and they'll pick up and just block that right away. There's no, hey, that guy he does a jab, a right jab, a left jab, and then he drops his guard. He doesn't do that. It's like he just constantly changes what he's doing. Sometimes he leaves the right side open, sometimes he leaves the left side open, and you have to learn. You have to read the NPC that's across from you, rather than going, I need to wait 2 seconds for him to drop his guard, and then I punch, and then he's going to do the same set of moves over again, and then I go back in for another hit, and then he's half dead. He's going to change up his rotation. He's going to do this rotation instead of that. So, Punch Out versus boxing or Fight Night for now is like a huge example of how AI has helped the franchise. I mean, I would still love a Punch Out to this day because that was a fun game, but it's all pattern recognition. I would like to see. I like the Fight Night games. I'm not a huge boxing fan, but I love the EA fight games. Those are fun.
Yeah,
I
I'm
wonder-
not either. When they came out on 360, I was like, it was kind of limited what was out. But yeah, those boxing games were fun, and you're absolutely right. It was more about skill than it was just about time.
I wonder how those adaptive AIs would react to trying to bite the ear.
They'd
You might not
use
be able to get
catch-up.
in and get a snack.
Yeah.
They'd be like, "Oh, we know Mike Tyson. We know how he plays. Don't let Mike Tyson near Evander Holyfield."
Yeah,
you know-
that's an interesting thing what you said right there. You know, they know Mike Tyson, know Holyfield. Those games that have the stats, this person has XY speed, XY power. No matter what game it is, those stats of a real person, AI would really exemplify that into more accurate gameplay for any game, really. But
Well,
for-
that's Madden's whole model. I mean, that's
Yeah.
Madden's whole model. That's NBA Live's whole
Yeah.
model. But going on what you're saying there, Shane, is like, in what Patrick just said, just clicked in my mind. We think of Double Dribble, Blades of Steel. I mean, like where we came from, all that. I mean, Blades of Steel was total pattern recognition. I mean, Double Dribble, if you hit the button the right way, you could be almost anywhere on the court and you're going to make that shot.
oh yeah, you could drop threes all day in Double Dribble.
Heck yeah. Double
just
Dribble.
hit the right boards.
Yeah, I mean, AI is great, but I mean, there is still a place in this world for pattern based games. I mean, they're still there. I mean, the platformers are where they're still there. A lot of the retro style games. I mean, the nostalgia is still there, and people still buy them and play them. I'm a much prefer AI based game versus pattern and stuff like that. But I still don't mind a good pattern based game. I mean, like I said, I would play Punch Out if it came out today. A new version of Punch Out, I'd play it. Even though knowing it's pattern based, I would still play it. I'd be like, I want to try this. And maybe they would just put in more newer people, Butterbean and all these other guys are in there again or something, and Mike Tyson's still the end boss, Maybe this time he's got Tiger with him.
I think Butterbean was King Hippo.
He was King of that's what I thought too.
But yeah, I want to see where things go, and I mean, technology advances so much faster than human beings do. It's really cool watching it evolve and change and create so many new experiences, for us as gamers. I'm really excited, and I think as long as it's done right, we could really see some cool ideals come out, and not just more intelligent hookers.
With police that don't respond.
We might have that too.
Yeah,
Maybe she
Yeah, she might
grabs
be
the
like-
baseball bat before it comes to her.
she'll club
Or-
you.
or she's a more discerning hooker. She's like, oh, I heard about this Shan guy. We don't want him. I've heard about Shan. Shan's
It's
not very
Shan.
good. Shan.
It's
Shan
the
murders
Shan.
all of them. He murdered all the hookers.
Yeah. So they learn to look out for Shan's pink Cadillac. They don't get in that thing.
That's right. That's right.
Then you could become like a crime boss or something at that point, right? You like own the town. It's Shan. No one messes with Shan.
Shan
Oh,
the
yeah.
Capo.
Don
He's a
Shan.
made man.
Yeah.
He's a made man. He's a lieutenant.
Owns
Or a Capo.
casinos.
You'll be
everything.
You'll be sleeping with those intelligent fishes.
While we were trying to look up stuff
From Call of Duty.
All right. When we were looking up stuff for AI, and I was trying to look for stuff that I wanted to talk about, one of the things that kept coming up was the game The Last Guardian. How many of you guys played Last Guardian? I played that game. Supposedly, and I, maybe after playing it, I guess I didn't realize this. The AI that they developed for that game took 9 years to develop. 9
Took 23
years.
just to get the damn game out, though.
That was because 9 years of it took to develop the AI for Treco, the half
Yeah.
dog, half bird creature.
I never did play it. I've always wanted to, though.
Right, it's a good game. I liked it, but it basically gets you to kind of connect with Trico, in the game. So it's a good, and so the AI in that game took 9 years to develop. So imagine that's going to go into start development of games. Like games are going to have to start developing if they want to get more in tune with the gamers and more adaptive. They're going to start developing AI, which means longer development times for games. Are we ready for a 10-year development time standard for a game? I'm not sure I am. Imagine
Well, I
getting-
mean,
I don't have that much
as long
time
as-
to give.
as long as they don't tell me about it. That's the whole thing. Because if they told me, "Hey guys, here's a first look at our new game," and it's 4 years in their development cycle, and I got to wait another 6 years, I'd be like, "Guys, I may not be here in 6 years. Come on, don't tell me.
Yeah.
Don't tell me
Wait
about it
4
until
more
it's a year or
years
two."
to tell me this crap. Yeah.
No,
Well,
no,
I mean,
no.
like,
Don't tell me until it's 2
developers
years
like
before.
Yeah.
like Epic and id Software and all the and Valve with their engines, they're gonna develop these AI constructs within their engines. So you're gonna have a Unreal Engine 5 or 6 or whatever that's gonna have this advanced AI construct. So an individual development team doesn't have to necessarily create an AI construct from the ground up. They'll already have an implemented one from these engines that are out there that most developers use. Now, when Unreal has the or id or Valve or all the Crysis, whenever they have these engines that introduce this type of stuff, who knows when that will be, right? It could be several years from now. But then once they develop these AI constructs within these engines, then it's going to be fair game for anybody to be able to utilize those.
Well, the scalpers are going to take all the engines anyways, so it doesn't matter.
And the tires.
Possibly.
And the tires.
A lot of good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more to talk about AI. It's just the topic can span for hours. And this is from a bunch of guys who don't know a lot about artificial intelligence. I know a little bit about it from being into robotics and wanting to learn about how machine learning happens, and that's my extent of it. I don't know how video game works. I know more of it from an aspect on machine learning as you teach it like a child, But outside of that, how they do it in a video game is beyond my comprehension. I've never put enough time or thought into it to learn how they make an AI operate in a video game. Like, I wonder, Alien Isolation is the one we brought up earlier with the awesome AI for the Alien Hunter. I would very much like to know how they made that work and why it was such a great concept for AI, but I don't know if I have that much reading into me to comprehend time as well as brain power to comprehend what they've done to make it work so well.
Well, I think we can all agree artificial intelligence is looking really cool for the future of gaming. We just need more human intelligence to really broaden it out.
Or we get real artificial intelligence and it just pumps out the best video games in the world because it's better than we are.
Right. It just develops games on its own.
Hey, if it can make a cake, it can make a game.
It can make a cookie cake. Remember, it was a
cookie cake. That's right. Forgive me. It was cookie cake.
It was the Google AI made a cakey recipe. It was the fluffiness of a cake and the crispiness of a cookie. And I don't know how that goes together because a light fluffy cake and a crispy cookie, I don't know, doesn't seem to go together. So,
you just deep fry it.
Deep fry the whole cake.
You make a cake and then deep fry it.
You put that in canola oil or vegetable? I'm asking for a friend.
Hey, if you can deep fry a Twinkie, you can deep fry a cake.
You can deep fry butter. You can deep fry a cake.
Oh, God. Eat a stick of butter. But so, I mean, yeah, we just somebody needs to invent an AI that does nothing but makes video games. So it's going to be, like I said, HAL, or it's going to be the AI in
Skynet.
It was the old one in Do You Want to Play a Game?
War games.
War games.
Yeah, that was it Whopper or something like that?
EA is going to be the first one to make it. They'll just be cranking out those games every day.
But EA is going to make it, so it's going to be a douchebag AI, and it just puts out crappy games and enslaves mankind to loot boxes and everything.
It doesn't even, as I say, don't even make the game. It just makes loot boxes.
It just makes DLC.
Yeah,
it's going to be like it's going to be what was the tribute game? The tribute Hunger Games. It's going to be the Hunger Games video games. It's going to be like, who's going to get the chance to play a video game? Who's going to be tribute and get to play this next year's game? We take one person from every ward and you fight to the death, and everybody pays to watch it. That's how
I pay tribute.
I want to play the game. So instead of you getting all these athletic young people playing it, you got all these middle-aged, heavy-set guys running around a field so they get a chance to play the video game.
It's going to look like a pro bowling tournament. I love to
be live on TV.
All right. So, I look forward to it. I look forward to serving our AI overlords in the future, Maybe I can eventually get a hospital bed, kind of like the old Stargate episode where all the people were living in the virtual world in a pod, together. We'll all be in different nursing homes across the world, but we'll all be in the same virtual world together.
I'll take the Wally chair.
Yeah, I want
there
Wally
you go.
chair.
Yeah.
Except for we got to watch out for Shane, because Shane always comes into the game we're playing and destroys half we're working on. Sorry, I thought that was the build button, not the demolition button.
Oh my God. 2 times that happened. In every
That's
game
why
we
Shane
played.
doesn't play Valheim with us, Be like, oh, sorry, guys, I accidentally destroyed that box full of stuff.
I never destroyed
Well,
anything in that game but myself.
We'll give Shane a little bit of leniency because in the forest I destroyed our cabin. The third one we built by cutting a tree down and it went smash right through it.
Yeah,
But
we
see,
were playing
that's
the forest.
good AI.
Yeah, that was Nick dropping a tree. But that's all right. Right before he did that, I dropped a tree on our gate. At first, I thought, oh, this is cool. The logs are falling into the camp. And then I hit another one, and I'm like, oh, they're actually destroying the wall and then falling into the camp.
Oh well,
It's
we were
amazing.
building.
It's amazing
Right.
how gravity works even in a game.
Right? You're thinking I'm gonna cheese this game and just chop all the trees around the outer fence, and they'll fall into the encampment, so I can just go get them at my leisure. Instead, they're tearing out half the wall when they fall in. So anybody else got anything else they want to bring up on the topic of AI and video games or AI in general before we put this AI to bed, before it puts us to bed?
Give me Seaman 2.
Just excited to see what the future brings.
Shane wants semen. Give him semen.
Give Shane Seaman. Give
Yeah.
Shan Seaman.
Shan
too.
Seaman 2.
All right. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode about us discussing AI. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. Leave us a review, leave us a like, tell us what you thought. If you didn't like it, tell us that too. We're open to debate. Make sure you just interact with us. We look forward to interaction with everybody out there and see what everybody thinks and what you might agree with or disagree with, or maybe we missed a huge AI subject topic in video games that we just all didn't even mention. So go ahead and let us know. And we hope to catch you in the next episode.
See ya.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.